Ennistymon, the streets were deadly still, but the silence, it was shattered when the tans came driving in.
Siobhan Mulcahy, the Arts Officer for Clare County Council. She had been communicating with Poetry Island about the PoetryTown project, and each county council chose a town for their county to represent the county, and Siobhan chose Ennistymon, and then I was very lucky that I was chosen to be the Poet Laureate.
To the sea, down to the great western sea, where a full-rigged ship waits for me. Hoist the halyard, raise the sail. I'm adventure bound with the shark, the dolphin, and the whale. A brisk wind at my back, my warm skivvies in my pack. For miles I've followed road and track.
And we're delighted that Grace Wells has accepted that role, and it is a very special role. We're one of 20 towns in the country, so there are 20 laureates around the country, and we would hope that next year there will be another 20 laureates, and that this will be an ongoing and rolling event, that we move from town to town, all the while using our words and our poetry and our literature to gather people together.
This incredible basket here, this really beautiful basket made from a branch and woven ivy. This was made by the local artist and writer Jane Shore, and she has filled it full of these little chaps, and these are prompts from her meanderings around Ennistymon. She's collected little phrases and prompts, and so the invitation to people is to take one of these and to take a notebook as well, and to take it home and to write a poem. And whether you're a seasoned poet or somebody who's never written a poem in your life, here's an opportunity.
What does that say?
It says, preening in 3s and 2s.
Poets are always falling out with each other, and people say it's because the stakes are so low, that's why the fights are so vicious. So if you know anything about poetry, you'll understand how much it cost myself and Carol MacDonald to clap for another poet to be the laureate. So that's the general sense of things, except that's a lie, we're actually really delighted. My job is to lower the tone, that's what I was told. The other two are intellectual, which I can rise to this challenge extremely well. So I'm going to start with a poem of my own. And this poem, I don't know why I picked it for this evening, but for some reason it just occurred to me, and it's a poem that I wrote after thinking of all of the mostly American culture that I've absorbed, where the man gets to ride off into the sunset, and I just thought I'd rewrite it with the woman riding off. Yes. And so this is called The Woman Walks. This time the woman's doing the leaving, and it's your problem if your children have to be collected or taken to the doctor. This time you don't get to be the slim rider slinking off into the sunset. This time it's her who gets to ride that old chestnut westwards, eating men for breakfast. And she won't wonder how you're doing or whether young Jennifer has lost a tooth yet. She'll be busy getting laid and breaking hearts, leaving unpaid bills behind her. And the only time she'll think of you is when she's a beaten docket, feeling melancholic in some long past its best motel room with nothing in her pocket. And she'll expect you to forgive her. After all, you can't tie down a dreamer. And she warned you from the outset that she wasn't a keeper. And then a year or so will pass until you're almost cured of your affliction. But she'll land in, unexpected, laden down with presents for the children, and she'll charm them so they won't know what hit them, and you'll think this time everything will be different. But then she'll blow the rent on a get-rich-quick that no one would believe in, and you'll catch her making out with the nanny on your couch, and before you know it, she's departed, and the next you hear she's been done for fraud in Florida, and you're left trying to arrange a prison visit for the kids. And yes, she expects that you'll still love her, and you will, you fool, because that's the way this cookie's crumbling, that's the way your foolish heart is built. This time the woman is heading for the sunset, and boy, you damn well better get used to it.
away free poetry books, free salmon books, and the shopkeepers, everyone has been really thrilled to take them. So they're all over town.
Can't keep them out. I just have to go down and get another few. People are loving it.
How many books of poetry have you given out to them?
I think I had 10 books, but we were out of them for a few days, and poetry at 60, 70, I'd say. Everyone's delighted with them.
Ennistymon is beautifully located, very close to Lahinch, to the sea, to the whole northwest elements of Clare, and it's a very exciting town, but it's also not very big. It's not over much. It's not too much for a sensitive soul to cope with, so it's not overly stimulating. And Schumacher talked about how small is beautiful, and I think as a philosophy that's so true. The minute that our systems get too big, they start to fall apart and they don't work so well, and in a smaller community we have the capacity to kind of look after people better. So many of those things brought me to Ennistymon, and it's a great place. It's got great bookshops, a great library, it's an art centre. For a small town, it's really got so much going on.
Grace is a very established poet. She's working on her third collection home at the moment. She also reviews poetry for a range of literary journals. She does poetry mentorships. She's written novels, a children's novel, and as far as I know, an adult novel as well.
Unpublished.
Publishing isn't everything, and so just to say that she's also started something that I find most interesting, which is making Grace's Home Movies, which is a fantastic name, and that is bringing a bit of visual culture to her poetic work so that it can be shared online and maybe consumed in some of the newer ways that we're consuming things. I had the pleasure during this week of listening to various podcasts with Grace, so I feel like I know her intimately. So in case you're finding this strange, Grace, I don't know everything about you. But just to say, you know, some of what you were saying really resonated with me in terms of that we really need to claim a space back for us to think properly rather than to just keep acting, and by that I mean to think and connect, you know, to think with our hearts, and I think that that's what Grace does. Her poetry is, you know, it's formal and it's precise and it's accessible and it's urgent, and I think we couldn't have a better laureate for Ennistymon. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Grace to you, and she's going to read for us. She's going to read from a variety of work, I think, but one being the poem which was specially commissioned for Ennistymon, for the laureateship of Ennistymon and for the Ennistymon PoetryTown. So let's give her one more round of applause.
I came here 3 years ago in September. I went straight into a winter. I've been living in Tipperary for nearly 30 years, and I didn't really know anyone here. It was winter, it was cold, it was wetter than the southeast, and it was all new. I would come out of Super Value, I live up to the right, I would turn left, I would get lost, which you can't really do in Ennistymon, but I seem to manage it. I think when you've made a big move, you're a little befuddled. And that stayed the way all the way pretty much until the spring, when quite suddenly, out of the blue, an old friend, Michael, visited me. And Michael had been the bank manager's son of the bank across the road in the 1950s. And we spent some time in the town, and that changed everything for me. So the day I settled in Ennistymon was the day Michael suddenly drove over from Golden, bringing the sun with him, chasing off the long winter of my being a stranger, everything unfamiliar, even myself. It turned out he'd lived in the town as a boy for 5 sweet years when his father ran the bank. We shared tea on the cafe terrace overlooking the Cascades, and Michael said how the building was once the post office, and a man who hunted rabbits sold the postmistress her own dead cat. And when I told him that couldn't be true, he said maybe it was only a story. He had lots of stories. About the fellow with a cart who collected bones from the butchers and tipped offal from his gate into the cascades, which led the eels to wait in the pools below, and boys like Michael to gather on the rocks, big conger eels that came thrashing after you, and you only 6 years old with no way to kill them but with your penknife. In the spring light, we walked through the town, Michael saying how once he could have gone in any door. As the bank manager's son, he'd been welcome in every house. And as if that hadn't changed, he took liberties with alleys and backyards to show me where pigs were once kept and killed, to reveal the town's secrets. Up Church Hill we went to where the rough boys had their gang, and round his old school where no teacher ever laid a hand on him, though every other child got clattered. Side by side, we walked beneath his old rooms in the bank, him telling me about his Ennistymon, and my talk of the present day, the cafes and bookshops, the surfers and artists, the rewilders and organic growers, the two of us weaving a plait of two towns. Then we followed the Ina into the woods, up Tattons, where the bluebells were coming, the ferns uncurling, in the trees with the first green leaves of a new beginning. Michael still talking, telling me story after story until he had brought me home. Ennistymon has a very vibrant alternative community of what I would call idealists, really. There's a lot of people seeking alternative ways of education, alternative ways of farming, alternative ways of building. There's people who are very clearly aware of what's happening with the environmental crisis, or crises, and biodiversity crisis, the climate change crisis. And people here in Ennistymon are really working with that and seeking positive solutions. They're trying to reforest, rewild, they're building using sustainable methods. There's all kinds of really exciting things happening and really exciting people.
What's this, you going to read a poem or are you going to recite a poem? Right now.
I bought a nally ladder and I bought a nally drill and I built a nally house on a little hill. How about that?
So each poet laureate was invited to write a poem about the poetry town that they lived in. To do that, we did a Spirit of Place workshop here in the town, going around looking at the town and kind of exploring what Spirit of Place means and what makes that. And I should confess, I know Maria. I've met Maria many times. She's a great singing instructor.
Yeah, I sing and I've sing in groups or whatever, and started to write songs recently, which is great. Never written a poem, and it was interesting because coming in I was like, but I don't know how to write a poem, and I thought, but that's the point of the workshop, isn't it? To learn something.
I've been writing, I suppose, 20 years, so I'm in a writing group in Mistow, Kennedy Writing Group, and so I write poetry.
Talk about the writers that you like, and whether that's songwriters. I mean, just absolutely work with what is the most helpful thing here. It might be songwriters, it might be poets, it might be novelists, whatever, whoever you like. And we're starting to move toward thinking about a writer's voice, because certainly, I mean, I think voice is everything, really. I've got some skills that we're going to look at, but I really think that the voice is the most important thing. Now, Leonard Cohen, for example, kind of tends to sound one way. Like, you tend to know a Leonard Cohen song. So I suppose voice could be unpacked. We could talk about it all afternoon, what voice is.
Or singers, I suppose. Like she was saying, Leonard Cohen, he said there's some singers who are actually kind of poets and they sing, but they're kind of more poets that sing.
That's the
and
words
that's him, no? Like that's very obvious. Like he doesn't really sing, he just talks.
And I also got to do a great yoga and poetry workshop in the woods, so that was a lovely thing to do as well. then the main thing really was the creation of the poem to honour the town. And Poetry Island had invited the poets to write a poem that was only 30 lines long. And once I began to engage with Ennistymon and the spirit of Ennistymon, I knew that I was going to extend beyond those 30 lines. So I started to write a piece that was about Ennistymon in the past, present, and the future. As an eco-poet, I am predominantly concerned with the future and how the climate crisis and our biodiversity emergency are actually here now in the present. So those were the things that I was weaving into the poem and weaving into all the work that I was doing this week. So the poem, when I read it to myself this morning, I spent the whole month working on it. It really took an hour to read, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. What I did is I lifted out most of the historical material because it is quite intense, and I didn't want to hit you over the head with it this evening. So I'm going to read some of this material and we'll just see how we get on. So the poem is called Ennistymon, a Poem for You. Ennistymon, where I live on your outskirts, you're the sound of church bells. Sometimes you're sirens, but mostly you're the lowing of cows and the river's constant flow. Everyone has a different Ennistymon. Mine is the sparrowhawk nesting in the glen, and the dusk flight of bats above my lane. My Ennistymon begins with a gateway of blue hydrangeas and a wall of pale gold roses that bloom all summer long. My Ennistymon is crabapple, rowan, laburnum, is red dahlias in window boxes and flower pots with clashing pink and scarlet begonia. It's old milk churns and a tin bath on the main street planted with daisies. It's the bumblebees on the lavender in the creperie courtyard and the pale pink rose behind poets reading their work in Salmon Press's garden. Everyone has a different Ennistymon. What I notice is the ivy growing up the drain pipes and the cracks in the concrete where grass and moss and dandelion break through. Ennistymon, if I know exactly what grows in you, the pink foxgloves in the car park, the purple honesty behind the courthouse, the purple buddleia sprouting from the monastery wall, it's because I love culture and nature both, and these days every petal matters, every leaf. Ennistymon, you were wolves once, and perhaps the giant elk, and brown bears lumbering down from their barren caves. And when the first people hereabouts lifted up their dolmen and standing stones, this place, like every other, was sacred ground. Well, ultimately, my poem was about 20 pages long, but it isn't finished. The more I researched Ennistymon and the more I found out about its history, it's really quite incredible, all the different things that have happened here. The history of Ennistymon very much is a microcosm of the history of Ireland. So the more I looked into it, the more I found, and the more amazing and delightful stories there are to be caught and captured. And I just got a real pleasure from doing that, from working with the muse of Ennistymon.
Huh? No, I think they might be all over print, but if you leave me your name or number, yeah.
And Enda has added a last verse.
He has.
Which is particularly nice.
Yeah.
He was my uncle. My mother came from Onyarans.
Oh, lovely, great. Yeah, so Tig was your
uncle, yeah.
Tig was your uncle, great.
But, yeah, a sort of a John B. Keane. He was our John B. Keane, and it is our anthem.
It is, it is. Oh, yeah, not the woman.
But my story I relate concerning my childhood. Sure I know 'tis my fate. In a town, in a valley, I was brought up with care. Ennistymon on the Ina, on the west coast of Clare.
Yeah, brilliant. when we used to come in here in this back door to my grandparents' kitchen, this was a pub, and Jimmy and Manzi, my grandparents, would be busy in the pub, and Manzi would be smoking cigarettes, and the odd time she'd come to us. But as the night would go on, and you know their pubs get louder and louder and louder, and then there's a certain moment after closing time when the pub kind of gets quiet and there's a few stragglers, and they'd be turning off lights. And there used to be holy pictures on the walls, like you'd have in most. And there'd be one picture of the Virgin Mary, but the Virgin had kind of faded. And what was in the corners of this was angels, you know, but they were playing harps and had wings on them. And I thought, that's the fucking fairies. You know, you'd be kind of tired, but after a night of drinking Fanta and eating crisps, you'd be kind of looking at them. And my owl had to be gone up the town meeting people, like. And I'd be in there looking at these, and drunk people would be kind of drifting in from the bar, and there was no women's toilet here. There was immense women had to use the toilet upstairs, or if a man had to do a sit-down job, he had to come through. So it could be 4 in the morning, and people would come through, and they'd be talking, they'd be scuttling, they'd go up the stairs and falling down, and so eventually over the years, that my association with the kind of magic that of North Clare and Ennistymon was from those memories. And my father's first book of short stories, The West, by Eddie Stack, was published in San Francisco when he had kind of settled into a bit of writing. And in nearly every story in this book you'll find a lot or a little of Ennistymon in it. And one of them, of course, The Warrior Carty, which they sometimes play the storytelling version of it on Clare FM. But it's you can see that it's from a pub in Ennistymon, which wasn't far from where he was reared, right here. So The Warrior Carty. The warrior had enough of the Christmas fair and took cover in Looney's bar. It was empty, dark and cold, still waiting to be strobed by the solstice sun. A harmless old fare, sniffled Bridgie, topping up his bill on a brown paper bag. 4 shillings for the powers, 3 and 6pence for the bottle of porter, and what's that altogether? 7 and 6, Bridgie, said the warrior, leaving 3 half-crowns on the red Formica counter. He settled them into a small pile. Thanks, Bridgie, and good luck to you. The same to yourself. They have the country ruined and everything is so dear. This country is shagged, Bridgie, and that's about the size of it now. 'Tis true for you. And what's more, the crowd that's doing it never fired a shagging shot in their life. 'Tis true for you.
One of the lines I said is everyone has a different Ennistymon, and I think that's so true. And of course I want to see everything with pink tinted glasses, because that's my experience of Ennistymon. But you know, we haven't solved all the social issues that we need to solve, and everyone does have a different Ennistymon. A friend wrote to me about her dark, unhappy childhood here. So I knew that I was speaking into a great broad range of experiences. So it was actually very nerve-wracking to try to work with that diversity of experience. But people were incredibly kind about the poem, and I think even excited to see Ennistymon and its history kind of condensed into something that was quite available, because often history becomes quite dull when we just read a lot of dates and about politicians and things, and poetry infuses history with imagery and with sound and with scent and all the things that social history really is, that they can be captured by poetry. So I think it's actually a really good medium by which to look at the past.
What's interestingly with the subject, if it resolves well or otherwise, and just about the form in general, the line length, the way the lines break, and so on. And then if we have time, I'll get you to do some kind of writing exercise as well.
Derelict house. Someone's childhood in there, trapped in the corner, a dream comes to them from the dark. Oh, that's spelling. I'm standing at the back door and I see the crumbling decay, the state of someone's mind out there who is always coming back to this dark corner. Memory has escaped them. They have crushed the attic floor and now the light pours in. Sitter. Why has no one claimed this house? No memories to claim. Darkness roams in and out of the mind on a conveyor belt, closing in on shut eyes. The dark corner flashes into the mind, a cold sweat wakes the sleeper. What is that place? Why do I know it? Rotten apples surround the tree, barbed wire through the trunk.
poems they make sense on one level, but they also evade sense on another. And it's fine for poetry to do that. And so there are things here that I don't understand, and I don't, and perhaps I'd like changed or clarified. But overall, it has a profound impact on me as a reader, and it's very rewarding to kind of work through it and to really begin to discern what's being explored.
I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, so much of the arts in this country are Dublin-centric. I mean, that's just an uncomfortable fact. So it's really lovely to see that people are thinking outside, beyond the pale, and bringing a lot of kind of potential for events out to the towns again, and particularly the smaller towns around Ireland, and really celebrating them. It was 1935 when the electricity first came from the Shannon Dam, and with it the streetlights and the first running water in so many homes, and with it the last time anyone chatted with their neighbour at the pump or the well. You were the last railway man to cook herring on a coal shovel in a steam engine firebox, and the final whistle blown on the last train leaving Ennistymon. And gradually, you were the years when people stopped leaving their doors unlocked, and the years people stopped setting a garden, the last cabbage seeds sown, the last potatoes set in the ground before Paddy's Day. Once in every kitchen were pictures of John F. Kennedy beside Pope John Paul, and bottles of holy water, and a small font by the door to dip your finger and bow your head. Ennistymon, you were the glow of the sacred heart lamp that never went out until it did. I've heard it said that through the 1960s you went slowly downhill, and there wasn't the kind of money for everyone to put up neon and tiles and aluminium. So for the most part, Ennistymon, you escaped modernity and came to protect the shop fronts that make you distinct. But even so, progress and plastic and mechanization harmed you, Ennistymon. Recession and emigration took their toll. By 1990, I'm told you were little more than a drinking town. And every night, come closing time, they played the national anthem, and everyone stood to show their respect, until mysteriously, without word, that tradition was lost to time. For myself, I can't thank you enough, Ennistymon. For me, you're a happy band of environmentalists, rewilders, organic gardeners, champions of slow food, your eco-architects and sustainable builders, your surfers against sewage and surfers for the oceans, your novelists and poets, bookshops and publishers. You're a crowd of artists and musicians, singers and composers, filmmakers and actors. You're experimental educators and psychotherapists working to understand the effects of trauma on the brain. You're herbalists and healers and doulas wishing to improve birth. You're a community of idealists trying to create a better world. Personally, Ennistymon, I'd like to keep you a secret. I don't want to talk about the happiness I find here. If something special is happening within you, Ennistymon, let's talk of it in whispers. Let's keep your qualities safe. See, Ennistymon, I'm like a parent worrying for a child. It's your future I think of, Ennistymon. I know progress would like to profit from you, and for another while such economies may win. But the climate scientists predict our species won't survive this century. Ennistymon, you may only have another 80 years. It will be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for the rich nations to become carbon neutral as we must. Who knows how this next century will unfold? For myself, I wish these 80 years are your best, Ennistymon. I wish you nesting boxes and bee hotels. I wish your cuckoo and starlings and swallows increase. Let these be the years we all pull together and are kind. And may our kindness look like kingfishers, dragonfly,
otters in your river. Doesn't everyone here love the earth?
Thank you so much, Grace. I don't know, did either Clare County Council or Poetry Ireland know that someone was going to chronicle an entire town? It's absolutely fantastic, such a piece of work. Such a piece of work. It has to become part of the town's actual story now, I think. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Mayor O'Brien of Ennistymon House, so he was throwing a ball, and Quayle the piper, he wouldn't do, that he drank too much alcohol. The people were agitated, that Quayle the piper, he could not make it. And he went around the town and wrote the humours of Ennistymon. It's a popular tune among fiddlers and pipers. Diddle-dee-diddle-dee Ennistymon, popular tune among fiddlers and pipers. Diddle-dee-diddle-dee-diddle-dee-dum, a popular tune among fiddlers and pipers. Diddle-dee-diddle-dee-diddle-dee-dum, a popular tune among fiddlers and pipers.
Mommy, why don't you speak white?
Because being grumpy under the influence wasn't allowed in no right spot. Because being grumpy under the influence wasn't allowed inside of the book. Because being grumpy under the influence wasn't allowed.
I'm doing a haiku writing workshop, a nature writing workshop, hopefully in the garden. I'm sure the rain will hold off. I'm a breaker threatening doom. I'm a tide that drags to death. I'm an infant. Who but I peeps from the unhewn dome and arch. I am the womb of every holt. I'm the blaze on every hill. I'm the queen of every hive. I'm the shield for every head. I am the tomb of every hope. Cheerful stuff. It was but as I am, so that ties in, is the kind of a pagan consciousness, a consciousness of, all things.
This one speaks to me, tired, 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 so tired.
It's like you like lightning, the word you had like steel. It'll tear your heart to pieces so that you might feel the heat of your eyes, the smell of your skin, the burning fire within. That you will shudder and shiver like they're next of kin. 'Cause no black medicine to take the coffee dishes down. And no black medicine to take the coffee dishes down. Your feet are sing along if you want. They'll make you cry your eyes out. They might even break your leg. You will just be lying there as if you were nearly dead.
Teenagers hanging out, preening in 3s and 2s, birds of a feather.
There are so many artists. It wasn't just the one poet laureate. There were so many people involved in this week of PoetryTown. So I think it's a great project. That's 20 towns. That's a lot of artists, a lot of writers, a lot of people impacted. I'm really hopeful that it will go on every year. And each year, the idea is that the town will change. So the possibilities are tremendous.
It's just a never-ending poetry thing.
It's just never-ending. It just goes on and on and on.
We'll all be waiting for it to rain now so we can come and have a look.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's a very big title for a week's work, but I do think just the nature of life in a small town that, yeah, I'm going to be remembered as the Poet Laureate for a goodly while, which is lovely, really.
Yeah, the dog is impressed.
Ennistymon, smoke was rising in the sky, though